research organization, even having the footprints that we have and everything that we've gathered, that piece of evidence right there where we had a scientist tell us, you have a Bigfoot, that was what really kind of turned things for all of us and made us realize everything we're doing is not in vain. So, they are here. We have proof they're here, and it's amazing.
So would you say that is, a big part of your motivation to go out there and search for Bigfoot, to get this scientific evidence that we can actually research?
Nope.
That's not even your main concern.
Nope. I'm not out for my 15 minutes of fame. I'm doing this because I didn't believe that they were there. And I found out they were there. It was kind of dropped in our lap. And the more I've gotten to know how they act and react, especially with my gifting site, and now that they have found ways to communicate with me and I can communicate back with them, now it's just more of learning more about them. I want to get to the point where when I go, they want to walk out and see me. Yeah. That's where I want to get. I want to get to the point where they trust me enough that they will step out. They will show me their children, and we can have that type of relationship. I know it sounds crazy, but so I'm a crazy lady, but
I don't really think that it does sound that crazy. I mean, when you say it, I think of Avatar or something, you know what I mean? Going into this world and try to get acceptance.
But it's
not
just
so out there. That's really makes sense, to be honest with you.
But it's just so funny because, that the quirky things that they do, like they love animal crackers. And for a while they would make the worst mess all over the place. And I just got to the point where I was out there picking up the trash and I'm saying, listen, guys, if you want, you guys have got to at least pick up after yourselves, or at least keep everything in, a small area so I can get it picked up. I said, but, you're running off, with these things. I don't know if you want, so if there's anything that you take that you love and you want more, you bring that package back. And every time a bag, I would get the large bags of animal crackers because they're so low in sugar, and they would disappear for 2-3 weeks at a time and then show back up. So they would let me know that they wanted more.
They wanted more of that. That's you're like the tough mom. I'm laying down the law. You need to clean up your mess, kids.
Yeah. You guys stop leaving stuff everywhere. But it was funny because they started doing it again, but they were doing it in a pattern. And I started to wonder, are you guys wanting me to go down here? Do you want me to move everything down here? I said, because I feel like that's what you're trying to tell me. And so they would lead me on this path. Every week I would go back and it would be the same path. And then I started finding things that I hadn't seen in a year. Lids to jars or a toy or something. And it hadn't been laying there because it wasn't dirty. It wasn't like underneath the leaves, because season has passed and, anything that would have been there would have been buried under the leaves. And these were things that were just brought back. And I was finding, and I'm like, I think they want me to move it. So I went up and I have a habit of talking out into the forest. And I said, okay, guys, I'm just going to ask you this. If you want me to move the gifting site, because I see you keep leading me down there. Do you want me to move it? If you do, take one of these containers and move it outside of this area, over there somewhere. And when I went back the next week, the container had been moved out from underneath where I had it, and it was moved about, I'd say 10, 15 feet, and was sitting up against a tree.
Jeez.
So they understand.
So you believe that they can understand you, at least to some degree.
Absolutely, I know they can.
That's
Um,
crazy. I mean, that just seems. I mean, it. Just from what you're saying, I mean, it just seems like they're just very intelligent. I think we're underestimating what this is.
yes,
You know.
people are underestimating them tremendously. A lot of people, call them animals. They have animalistic instinct. Of course, they live out in the forest, they live with animals. They're going to have that, but they have a lot of human characteristics. Like I said, one of their favorite things for me to leave are balls of all different sizes. They will take them, they will play with them, and they will eventually squeeze them until the little thing pops out and the air comes out, and then they'll bring it back. I have one actually on my dresser that it was just a small little rubber kids ball that is full with air, and it had Spider-Man on it. It was bright and everything, so I thought I'd put it out there. And we were moving things around in there one day, and I went to reach down to move it because I thought it hadn't been moved, and I went to touch it, and it was flat. So I picked it up and put it in the palm of my hand, and I looked at it, and I'm like, oh my God. And my husband's like, what? I said, would you look at this? There is a handprint permanently embedded in this ball.
What?
The handprint goes all the way around the ball, which I can't even get my hand halfway around it. My husband could get his like 3/4 of the way around it, but this handprint goes all the way around the ball. And they had played with it and squeezed it until the little valve popped out and it went flat. But they squeezed it so hard that there is literally a handprint embedded in the ball.
That's insane.
Hmm.
That's crazy.
But I keep that on my dresser along with the gifts that they have given me.
So what would they give you? What you're giving them food and toys and things like that. What kind of stuff do you see back from them?
The very first thing they ever gave me was an arrow, which I thought was kind of odd. But
Like a man-made arrow or
an arrow. Yes, it was gold tipped.
okay.
It was rusty. It was rusty. It had been in the forest a while. It was dirty. And I was like, okay, well, thank you. I don't use these, but thank you. But the thing was, is they were trying to tell us something because later that day we found 2 deer stands in the safety zone. And that's what they were trying to tell me.
In safety zone, you mean the area that you're allowed to go in?
It's the area where the hunters are not allowed to be.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so we were able to report that, and DNR came out immediately and took down the stands. And they said, how did you know they were there? And I was like, we were just hiking and ran across them. And which is what happened. I didn't have to tell them that, well, Bigfoot left me an arrow, and I kind of wondered what it was about. But the arrow was the first thing. The second thing was a piece of wood that was like shaped as a kind of an odd looking triangle.
Mm-hmm.
And you could tell it had been rubbed on a rock to where it was smooth. After that, it was a handful of morel mushrooms. And let me see. Some of my favorite, actually, one of my favorite things was a deer antler. And it's beautiful. It's completely beautiful. And the story behind that was that my daughter had said when we were out there a week prior, kind of in her head, man, it would be cool if they left her something like a deer antler, something really cool and really amazing. And it was the next week that I got a deer antler.
Oh my God!
And my daughter's
like
going,
reading your mind, huh?
and I'm like, what? She goes, I thought to myself last week that it would be cool if they brought you one. And I'm like, what, out loud? And she goes, no, I just thought it to myself.
What?
That's when, because I've had a lot of people ask me, do you think they communicate telepathically? And I was like, no. I didn't believe it. I had some people talk to me about it who had some experiences. A lot of people had talked about it. But until that day, and that's what I always say, I will have an open mind about it. But until it happens to me, I'm not going to say yes or no. And it happened. I mean, my daughter thought it, and they left it. And
that's really interesting.
Yeah, and that's when I started to try myself to communicate with them without speech. And it works. And I know it sounds crazy, but
Well,
they had, I kind of had some doubts after we had moved the gifting site. I had found this most wonderful product that they love, which is, it's a brand of milk. It's called Horizon.
oh
And they
yeah, in
actually
the red
have,
container.
pardon me?
It's like in a red cardboard box or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And it doesn't have any GMOs or any bad stuff in it,
It's
and they actually
organic.
have shelf stable milk in
Mm-hmm.
the little kid size ones.
Yep.
So I started leaving those for them. And some of them would just get, they would bite. I showed them how to put the straw in, but instead they take the straws off, chew on them, and then take and poke their tooth through the hole where it's supposed to go and drink it that way. But I had been finding the boxes torn up, and I thought that, okay, there's other animals out here.
Mm-hmm.
And I just said to myself, you're going to have to let me know. I don't mean to doubt you, and I apologize for doubting you, but you guys are going to have to let me know that it's you and that, this isn't in vain, that your stuff isn't being taken by other animals. And the next week I went out there, I found the same thing. Another piece, another box had been torn to shreds and left in the same exact spot. But in the middle of it was a non-chemical, the glow sticks.
Yeah.
Well, I use the ones that are non-chemical that run by battery,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been using them for years. And I get these great ones that have the like little light patterns you can put on it. They have a whistle on the end, and one had disappeared a couple of weeks prior from the new gifting site. And I picked it up and I was like, oh, so I was looking at it and I went to turn it over and look for the whistle, and I'm like, wait a minute. Oh my God. And I looked at it and I realized this was the very first type of glow stick I ever used with them. The one I held in my hand had been missing for a year. And there it was in the middle of this torn up milk container. And the week before, I had asked them to let me know it was them. And I found that, and I showed my husband, and his jaw hit the floor.
I'll say you got your answer, didn't you?
I absolutely got my answer. And that's why I said we've learned to communicate in that way. And I love that. And they trust us. They trust us to the point where they've, done some crazy things. If my husband goes out by himself out there, they mess with him hardcore. They love to scare him. And I do believe that they have more respect for women because they are so gentle and so quiet and try to do things not to scare myself and my daughter when we're there. But when he's there, especially when he's there alone, they like to mess with him. And I've got a really good story if you want to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, go ahead.
He was out there. It was during one of the IBRO campouts. It was the spring one, I believe. And I had gone home for the night because it's still too chilly for me to camp. And he had stayed up. There was nobody in because he always goes to the overflow campground. There was nobody there except for him. It was 4 o'clock in the morning, and he was, just kind of listening and everything. And he thought he heard footsteps. And he went to turn his flashlight on, and he couldn't catch anything, and he noticed it was getting a little low. So he goes to the car. He opens the car door, and he squats down on the ground, and he reaches in on the floorboard. And he's changing the batteries in the flashlight, and he kind of hears kind of a rustling noise.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks up, and he doesn't see anything. He goes back to what he's doing. About that time, something grabbed a hold of the back of the car and shoved it.
What?
The entire car lunged forward and shook. This man jumped in that car, pulled that door shut, and he didn't come out till noon the next day.
I don't doubt it.
So he drove over and told everybody what had happened, and they were just kind of like, yeah. He goes, no, you guys, the thing shook the entire car. Shook it. The whole car lunged forward. Are you not hearing me? So they went over and they